Some key players out for Sunday's game against Carolina, but it looks like some key players might be returning. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome into this live Friday preview episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message, no ads or anything like that. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Keys to victory and predictions coming up in a little bit, but let's start with the injury news as far as who is in and who is out, as we do on all of these live preview episodes. So, Antoine Winfield Jr., Cade Otton, Sterling Shepard are all officially out for Sunday's game against the Carolina Panthers. Now, hopefully they'll all be back and ready to roll against the Saints next week, but for now, the Bucs are going to have to get a must-win without them. Payne Durham, I thought, did a decent job in Otton's absence last week against the Cowboys, but he wasn't nearly the receiving threat that Otton typically is. Now, Baker is going to have one less weapon in addition to not having Cade Otton, and that is because of the loss of Sterling Shepard. So Shep, who had a really bad drop at the beginning of the Cowboys game last week, suffered a hamstring injury in the second half when he was running for a first down. He immediately came up limping. He grabbed the back of his leg, and within minutes, he was ruled out for the rest of the game, which is never a good sign. So from that moment, I believe I even texted the insiders. We got some insiders in the live chat. You can attest that I said, yeah, Shepard's probably missing time. That is never good when they immediately rule a player out instead of saying, they're questionable to return, they're doubtful to return. Soon as they say out that quickly, it's not a good sign. So the Bucs are going to be without him. And although he's had some bad moments, I mentioned the drop in Dallas, he's had some bad penalties throughout the season. He was a big part of the Bucs' success once Mike Evans and Chris Godwin went down. Even since Mike Evans came back, Shepard has been a big part of the offense. That is going to be a huge loss for them. And of course, the Bucs also placed safety Christian Izien on injured reserve earlier this week. He will not be available on Sunday. That just adds on to the problems that the Bucs are having in the secondary. Izien has been a key player with all of these injuries at corner and at safety. His ability to play multiple positions on defense has really, really helped. So we're going to see what kind of combinations that Todd Bowles uses on the back end of the defense this week to try to keep Bryce Young from throwing all over the place like he did the first time around. With all of that said, there might be some good news for the Bucs coming sooner than later. So on Friday, the Buccaneers waived defensive lineman Ernest Brown and linebacker Antonio Greer. And you might be asking, James, why is waiving two defensive players good news? Well, that clears two roster spots, which points to the fact that it's likely that wide receiver Cam Johnson and safety Jordan Whitehead will be activated off of injured reserve and will play on Sunday. Whitehead's practice window just reopened earlier this week, but Johnson has been practicing the last few weeks. He had been placed on IR with an ankle injury. Whitehead had been placed on IR with that pec injury a few weeks back. Remember, he made a tackle close to the goal line and immediately grabbed like the side of his chest and near his armpit. You knew right away that it was a pec injury. Luckily, it was not as severe as it could have been, and he's been able to work his way back. Both players were full participants in practice all week and are listed as questionable for Sunday. Also listed as questionable, but was a full participant all week, is linebacker KJ Britt. Now, JJ Russell has played well in his absence. We're going to see what kind of workload each player ends up with against the Panthers, but it'll be nice to have KJ Britt back since the Bucs are so thin at inside linebacker. Now, for the Panthers, they will be without linebacker Josey Jewell, as well as cornerback Chow Smith-Wade. Both are listed as out. Then cornerback J.C. Horn is doubtful with a hip injury. Tackle Taylor Moton, say that 3 times fast, is doubtful with a knee injury. Questionable for Carolina are Jadeveon Clowney, Cam Gill, Chuba Hubbard, Xavier Legette, Damian Lewis, A'Shawn Robinson, and DJ Wonnum. I would expect all of those guys to play unless something goes sideways in the next 24 hours. But if J.C. Horn is out, which things are trending in that direction, Mike Evans could be poised for an even bigger game than he had the first time around, which you all know was an 8-reception, 118-yard, 1 touchdown performance. This is your friendly reminder that Mike Evans needs 91 yards per game over the next 2 weeks to hit 1,000 on the season. So anything over that makes the challenge next week against the Saints that much easier. Though, wouldn't it be nice for him to just have over 182 yards this week and be done with it? It wouldn't be the first time that he did that against the Panthers. Of course, he had the infamous 2022 game where he had 207 yards and 3 touchdowns on 10 receptions, but he's gone over 100 yards 5 times against the Panthers and has over 150 yards twice. That includes that 2022 game I just mentioned, as well as last year, he and Baker Mayfield hooked up for 162 yards and a touchdown in Tampa. So there is all of that. And I was talking to Evan Klosky right before recording, and he said that the loss of Josey Jewell at linebacker for the Panthers makes their run defense even worse. We're going to talk plenty about the Bucs run game and the Panthers run defense coming up in a little bit, but I do want to jump into the chat real quick. Oh, no, Demon Hunter. No, he says Grand Admiral Thrawn, no howdy. Ezra is cooler. So for those watching on YouTube, I got my Grand Admiral Thrawn that I've been waiting on for over a year. And no, Demon Hunter Thrawn is the greatest character in all of Star Wars, period. Full stop. He is the best character. And if you don't believe me, that's a you problem. Demon Hunter also says, why no Culp? So here's kind of the thing with Devin Culp. He doesn't obviously have a ton of experience. I think he's been active in like 2, maybe 3 games this season. He did have some really impressive splash plays in preseason, but he's not a guy that they are going to rely on a lot, especially in must-win situations. He might be out there for a few snaps. He might even end up with a target. Who knows? But he is not up to the level of Payne Durham or Cade Otton or Ko Kieft, which is why he was a project. We knew he was a project when he was drafted. 7th-round picks generally are. So, you know, I'm not too worried about whether or not Devin Culp plays or why he's not getting, you know, many snaps or any targets or things like that. He's a developmental player. And that's typically what you're going to find in the 5th, 6th, 7th round of the NFL draft. So, you know, Devin Culp will probably be a bigger factor in the offense next year and beyond. This week, this season, I'm really not too worried about it. Demon Hunter also says Mike gets his 1,000 yards this week. I don't know if he's going to have quite that many. We got Timothy in the chat. It's supposed to rain during the game. I mean, it's Florida. It rains at some point every single day, but that would also help the Buccaneers run game if it does rain. I am going to talk about keys to victory. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You all know how much I love going to live events, concerts, sporting events. I'm constantly talking on the show about a concert or a game I'm getting ready to go see. And the first place I'm checking out when I look for tickets is Game Time. I just used Game Time to pick up some concert tickets for a show I'll be going to in February. And I used Game Time Picks, which is a new feature that Game Time has that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And with all-in pricing, I know exactly what I'm going to spend up front, so there are no surprises when I get to checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the Madman Tyler Rowland. You've got Tony Wiggins. They come at you with some real NFL talk. You add in the Locked On local experts. You get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. So make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We got Richard in the chat. James, my wife got us Linkin Park concert tickets at Dodger Stadium in September. That is awesome. I really, really like their new album. I do. And I think if they were called anything other than Linkin Park, people wouldn't hate on it as much because it's a fantastic album. I hope you have an absolutely awesome time. And then Demon Hunter says, in regards to my Thrawn comment, sorry, I will disagree with you, James. Well, you are entitled to your wrong opinion. Thrawn is the coolest. But let's talk about these keys to victory. And I already see some of you guys dropping your predictions. You're going to have to resubmit those when we get to that portion because I won't be able to scroll through and find all of them again. But let's start with the offensive key to victory for the Buccaneers. Pound the rock. Rinse and repeat, right? I've talked about this numerous times. The Bucs, I talked about it last week. That was the key to victory. Run the ball against the Cowboys. They did not do that to start the game, and they fell behind the 8 ball immediately. Now in this game against the Carolina Panthers, running the ball has to be the focal point. Evan pointed out after he and I had recorded our episode together earlier this week that the Panthers allowed 6.8 yards per carry last week against the Arizona Cardinals. And James Conner left that game in the beginning of the third quarter. And the Panthers still allowed nearly 7 yards a carry. Bucky Irving ran for 4.3 yards a carry last week, only had 16 carries. But the week before, 7.8 a carry. Against Carolina 4 weeks ago, 6.1 yards per carry. He finished with a career-high 152 yards, a career-high 25 carries, and got into the end zone. The week before that Panthers game, 7.3 yards a carry against the Giants. Look, Bucky Irving shows all the signs of being an absolutely incredible running back for the Buccaneers for the next few years. He is far and away the best rookie running back this season, and he's only gotten better by the week. Somebody in the chat pointed out he only needs 80 yards to get to 1,000 on the season. And think of how long it took for him to actually get legitimate carries in each game. He was a sub 50% snap guy for the first month and a half. So give him the ball. Put the pressure on Carolina to stop him instead of having Baker drop back and throw on like 9 or 10 of the first 12 plays or something ridiculous like that. Establish the run. The passes are going to be there. The plays to Mike and to J-Mac, they're going to be there. But get the run game going first, because Carolina has proven time and time again that they cannot stop it. The Panthers could put 15 guys out on the field on defense and still can't stop the run. Rachaad White is probably going to be the one on the field first because he always is. and he's been putting up really good numbers. He's just been overshadowed by what Bucky Irving has done. Last time the Bucs played the Panthers, Rashad had 6.9 yards per carry, finishing with 76 yards. When Bucky was out the next week against the Raiders, Rashad had 5.3 yards per carry. Against the Chargers, 4.3 yards per carry. He's consistently getting over 4 yards a carry, no matter who the opponent is. Get this run game going out the gate. The Panthers can't stop it. They haven't been able to stop it all year. They're not going to magically figure out how to stop it in week 17. They are dead last in yards per game, allowing 175.2 on the ground. To put that into perspective, they have allowed 2,628 rushing yards through 15 games this season. That is the most in the NFL by more than 500 yards. They have allowed more than 500 more rushing yards than the New York Giants, and the Giants are 31st in the league. So do not overcomplicate things. Do not overthink things. Run the damn ball down their throats. Do it all day long. And as a result, those shots to Evans, those shots to McMillan, those shots to Durham, to Ryan Miller, to Cam Johnson down the field are going to be there because the Panthers are going to be forced to get sucked into the play action because you will have effectively run the ball for the majority of the game. Defensively, you have to get after Bryce Young. Over the last 5 games, Young has been sacked 13 times. The Buccaneers were responsible for one of those. He's been sacked 9 times over the last 2 weeks. Now, one of those games was against Dallas, and we all know how relentless Dallas pass rush was, but the Bucs have to get back there and get Bryce Young to the ground. He had nearly 300 yards passing in the first meeting between these teams, and he completed 56.5% of his passes. But here's where the real issue is. Young had an average of 6.91 air yards per attempt. That was his 3rd highest output on the season. That means there was no pressure, and it gave him time to let his guys get open down the field and make plays, and they absolutely did. Adam Thielen, 99 yards and a touchdown. He had another touchdown taken back after review. He had that incredible one-handed catch in overtime right before Chuba Hubbard's fumble. Adam Thielen was killing this defense. Tommy Tremble, the tight end, we talked about him leading into the last matchup. And for some reason, he loves playing the Buccaneers because he always shows out. 5 receptions, 77 yards. Xavier Legette, he had 4 catches. Bryce Young had all day to sit back there and let his receivers expose a weakened, injured, and lackluster secondary. You cannot keep giving Young time in the pocket. He will still make mistakes if you get him under duress, but you can't give him enough time to stand there and let his receivers get open down the field. Help your beaten up secondary by not putting them on islands. Diaby, Cansey, Vea, Nelson, JTS, these guys have to step up and make plays in the backfield to get the job done. You know Levante is going to get sent on blitzes. You know Bowles is going to be sending corners. He will probably send Tyke Smith a couple of times throughout this game. But you have to get home. You have to get in Bryce Young's face and really make it a long day for him. Going to jump into the chat again one more time. We got Narav says, mess them up. Put Sean Tucker out there first. Yeah, no, I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I would like to see Sean Tucker get involved a little bit throughout this game. We got Demon Hunter says Dallas just has a freak for a kicker. Yep, Brandon Aubrey is what Justin Tucker used to be. I will continue to say it. Narav says, so you're saying all of the backs need angry run nominations? Yes. Yes, all of the angry run nominations need to come courtesy of the Buccaneers. You know what? Rashad can get nominated, Bucky can get nominated, Tucker can get nominated, and Baker can get nominated. That's the kind of dominance that the Buccaneers need to have in the run game on Sunday. Steven says, I know it isn't close to draft night. If you had to predict the Bucs round 1 pick, yeah, I really have no idea. It's really going to depend on where they fall and what they're going to be looking for. It's going to depend a lot on what kind of moves they make. I am still of the firm belief that Jamel Dean is not going to be a Buccaneer next year. The Bucs are going to get out of that contract. It depends on who the head coach is. If the Bucs have Liam Cohen as the head coach, they could have a new defensive coordinator, and now you're probably looking to change a few of the personnel situations on the defensive side of the ball. Pewter Report was out there saying that if the Bucs win the division, Todd Bowles isn't going anywhere. You might be losing Liam Cohen. You might need to change some things on the offensive side of the ball. So there's just so many factors going into this. I've said a couple times on the show, I've texted with the insiders. If I'm the Bucs and I'm in that, early to mid 20s range, I think Benjamin Morrison falls to them. I think the injury to Benjamin Morrison this year, the cornerback out of Notre Dame, he got injured in October. He had hip surgery. He's missed the rest of the season. He has not played in the college football playoff. He's been out for a while, but he would have been probably the second corner off the board had he not been injured. I think if he's not recovered in time to be able to go through the combine and those kinds of things, he can fall to the bottom third of the first round. That is an absolute shutdown guy that I would be super excited about the Bucs getting. But yeah, we just have so much time that it's really hard to pinpoint anything. We have predictions coming up next. Start dropping your predictions in the chat. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, yes, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and a personal favorite of mine, Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, and selected short stories. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever, plus go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just sit back and enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. hillsdale.edu/locked-on. Wrapping things up here on a live preview edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. We've got, let's see, Demon Hunter in the chat says, can we stop sending our linemen into coverage? No, absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Because situations like what the Bucs faced at the end of the Dallas game, when you saw Vita Vea drop back into coverage, when Dallas was expecting him to come after Cooper Rush, he was the guy that was there and blew up that third down play, forcing the punt before the Rachaad White fumble when the Bucs got the ball back. Todd Bowles uses so much deception and so many different things that it actually throws off the opposing offense. All of a sudden, Vita Vea is dropping into coverage. You're not expecting that. And now you have a lineman that's lost looking for big number 50 that he's supposed to block. He's not there. You could have a blitz coming from another direction because they've overloaded one side. And then you think you have a first down because you can dump it off, short of the sticks, but then Vita Vea is right there. So, I get why you would want them to not drop back in coverage, but, Todd Bowles doesn't do it super often. When he does, more often than not, it is effective. Let's see. We got Bry in the chat says, on the plus side, the second quarter didn't seem so cursed last week. Well, that's because the first quarter sucked so bad. They just kind of flip-flopped it there. Hopefully they have a full 4 quarters of solid football. And how are they going to do that? I'm going to tell you right now exactly how it's going to be done because I know everything and I can predict the future. My predicted player of the game, back-to-back weeks, it's Bucky Irving. I am saying that Bucky Irving has a huge day. This is the perfect storm for an explosive performance with the way that he has been running the ball and the way the Panthers are just terrible in run defense. As I mentioned earlier, the last time around, Bucky had over 150 yards, ran for over 6 yards a carry. The Panthers are allowing 5 yards a carry on the season, but allowed almost 7 against the Cardinals last week. Over the last 3 weeks, they're allowing 6.3 yards per carry. This is going to be a huge day for Bucky Irving and the Bucs run game. My bold prediction, Mike Evans outperforms his last game against Carolina. I have talked so much about the running game in this episode, as I should, because this run game deserves to be talked about. But all of that running the ball is going to open things up because you're going to have to continue to commit more and more resources to the box. You're going to have to crowd the line of scrimmage if you have Bucky and Rashad gashing you for 6, 7, 8 yards at a time. You might even see an early Bucky 20, 25, 30-yard scamper. You're going to have to continue to commit more and more resources to the line of scrimmage. If J.C. Horn doesn't play, now things get even more open down the field. They have to respect the play action game. They have to, be ready to try to take care of Bucky or Rashad, whoever the ball carrier is. That opens things up down the field for Mike Evans. And there isn't a guy on the Panthers defense that can cover Mike Evans one-on-one. He is going to have a day. Last time, 8 receptions, 118 yards, and a touchdown. I like Evans to have 10 receptions, $125, and 2 touchdowns, with both of those touchdowns over 30 yards apiece. So, as I mentioned, I talked to Evan before recording. I wanted to check to make sure his score prediction remained the same. He is sticking with it, 34-20 Bucs over the Panthers. The Buccaneers are 8.5-point favorites with an over-under of 47.5. I'm taking both of those. This is a must-win for Tampa, and they are going to come out with the playoff mindset, motivated to put themselves in a position to be back in first place if the Commanders win on Sunday night, which I would expect them to. They do not control their own destiny right now, but what they do control is what they can do against the Carolina Panthers. And what they can do is take care of business in their house. I am saying the Bucs win this one 31-17. Going to jump into the chat and get your guys' predictions. Demon Hunter with the bold says Tyke gets a pick 6 against Bryce and while covering Tommy Tremble. I love that. We've got Gary in the chat says 17-14 Tampa. He's predicting a close game. Look, I respect it, man. Division matchups, you can throw records out the window. They're more often than not, they are going to be close, tough games, especially when guys know each other as well as Dave Canales and Todd Bowles know one another. It's going to be a very interesting chess match. It was the first time around. It took overtime for the Bucs to get a win. Nurav says 31-12 Bucs. Bold prediction, Cansey and Vea combined for 4 sacks. I love that. Bantry, bold prediction, the D shocks us all and pitches a shutout. He says Bucs win 24-0. I don't know if I would even go that bold. I might predict a Bucky Irving 250 rushing yard game before I would predict a shutout. But hey, I hope you're right. Steven says bold prediction, Bucs force Bryce Young in the I'm sorry, my contacts are blurring up on me. Bucs force Bryce Young in the end zone for 2 points. Cansey pushing the O-line and Anthony Nelson finishing the job. So he's predicting a safety to help the Bucs get a 26-20 win. We got John in the chat. He says Mike Evans goes for 150. I love that. We've got Demon Hunter. Bucky scores the first touchdown of the game on a 55-yard run with 5 broken tackles. I would love that because I'm in my fantasy championship. I'm starting Bucky Irving, and I would get super bonus points for a 50-yard touchdown run. Let's see. What else do we have in here? I know I had some earlier. Let's see. Lakita says, without rain, I could see Baker getting to 4,000. Baker will get close, and I think it takes Mike both games to get there. I do think that it'll probably take Mike Evans both games to get to his 1,000. But Baker and Bucky, they're both 80 yards away. Baker's 80 yards away from his second career 4,000-yard season. Bucky 80 yards away from his obviously first career 1,000-yard season and the first 1,000-yard rusher for the Buccaneers since Doug Martin back in, I can never remember, it was either 2014 or 2015. But there are some milestones that can be hit in this game, and you guys know exactly where I will be after the game, right here live, breaking it all down. But that's going to do it for this episode. Please check out everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure you are subscribed with the notifications turned on YouTube so you know every time I go live. And, of course, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.